On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, an article on the hockey writers has a headline that reads, Colorado Avalanche won't be contenders this year. In the words of Keenan Thompson, what's up with that? New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli, with me as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, X, Locked On Avalanche, Instagram, and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. Make sure you subscribe to our Subtext as well. Link to that's in the show notes below, because when you do, you chat with Kyle and I one-on-one, get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast, which we will do in a little bit as well. We'll get to that article from The Athletic. We'll start there, but we also have some interesting graphics that it's maybe a graphic heavy episode.
The visual experience, Locked On Avalanche,
yes.
visual experience.
And so if you have access to YouTube, who doesn't have access to YouTube? That's a stupid question, but go over there because there's going to be a visual exam on this one. And it's about the opponents across the league, best and worst opponents that your team has faced since 2020. There was a site that put that up. And then The Athletic put up, they ranked how basically franchises are spending their money. Are they spending their money wisely? Are the contracts on the books good? Are they bad? And the Avalanche, they like it. So we'll get to that in the second segment. But where we're going to start is with that, not Athletic, the hockey writers article. That like they are. It's you read it. So it's almost like a gotcha headline to suck you in, like it did me when I read that. and that is the headline. Colorado Avalanche won't be contenders this year. And it made me like, okay. And I like the hockey writers. I think they do a fine job over there. And this is from Ryan Womeldorf. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that a little bit, but who is not like, he doesn't seem like he typically follows the Avalanche, but the stuff he puts in here are legit. They're valid. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have a problem with what he says. Just going through the like sub headlines within the article. One is goaltending is an issue. Sure. No denying that. The next one is secondary scoring. And then he talks about Landeskog, about coming back, but not really back. So those are like the three things. We'll get into them a little bit, but I don't necessarily have a problem with, those different aspects of the article, but the headline I have a little bit of a problem with. But what's your take on it right now?
Is it that controversial of a statement or a headline? I mean, Brennan mentioned it yesterday, and we are all kind of in agreement that the Avs, they don't have that same hype and swagger coming into this year that they have had in previous years. Last year at this time, we were talking about all the free agent acquisitions and, oh my God, Ryan Johansson, Miles Wood, Ross Colton, like that contender, boom, give the Avs a cup. This year, right. It's been a lot of little moves, and then you're relying on business as usual. And as the article points out, business as usual in Colorado hasn't been ideal in some aspects, but to the credit, like you mentioned, like topic number one, goaltending is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Right.
That's for 31 other teams as well.
Yeah. And the thing with me is like to use the phrase of not a contender is what I disagree with. Because they are like, I guess it's what's your definition of a contender? Like, is your contender like your top 2 teams in the league? It's top 4 teams in the league? It's top 10 teams? Is it every team that makes the playoffs? Because we always love to tout the parity in hockey, and we always love to say just make it to the playoffs. So, and then anything is possible. The Florida Panthers showed you that 2 years ago. Just getting in the playoffs, anything is possible. So that is a broad, if you're saying like, hey, all 16 teams that make it are therefore considered contenders. I don't know what his metric is on saying what a contender is. If that's it, then he's saying the Avalanche are not a playoff team. I don't think he went that far in the article to say that they're not. He even said they have their core and they rely on that, which is fine. But I mean, even though, like you're saying, like what the Avalanche did in the offseason, which we knew was going to happen this way, not just going crazy spending money that they don't have, but they kept Jonathan Drouin for another year. They got Casey Middlestat signed in, and then made these small things. And then you still have the big guns. And when you have that, I'm sorry, you are a contender. Are you a favorite? No. Like, there's a difference. The Avalanche are no longer right now that team that is going into the season and people are like, that's our number one pick to represent the West. I think you'll get some people saying like, yeah, they have a shot. They have as good as a shot as some of the top tiers teams in the West, but I wouldn't put them at number one. I would not slot them into number one. But to say that they're not a contender, I have a problem with. I do.
Well, let's strip it down to as easy, basic as possible when it comes to this. Are this current Colorado Avalanche team, with the contracts the way they are, with the Val and Gabe situation as it is, Chris, do you think this team could win the Stanley Cup?
Do I think they could? I don't think the percentages are zero.
Well, no,
Sure,
absolutely. Like they're probably, you would probably say that about 6 to maybe 8 teams right now, looking at roster construction, that this team has a legitimate shot at making a run for the Cup.
Yeah.
The Avalanche, they got to get lucky. They got to handle some moves and they got to figure it out as they go along. But as of right now, they do not look like one of those teams.
I'm not buying into that yet. Like, we'll see how the season plays itself out. And if those things, that a lot of stuff that we talked about yesterday with Brennan, like if all these things go right, they're a contender. It's no guarantee that those things go right. And then we can have that conversation, but we haven't even played a second yet. And articles like this are already thrown in the towel on the Avalanche was like, dude, like you have the reigning Hart Trophy candidate on your name. You have the all-world Cale Makar on your team. Like this is not a pushover of a team. And this is one of those teams that when you get to the playoffs, they are tough to beat 4 times. Sure, it can happen. It has happened. But they will make life difficult for an opponent, and they will make it very difficult for you to beat them 4 times. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying give them the cup. I'm just saying like they're not just a pushover.
But you've also seen in the last, maybe you could honestly say, starting with Colorado's Cup run, the one-line super teams, that's not enough anymore. Florida was a team of depth.
Sure.
Vegas was a team of depth. That Colorado team that hoisted the cup, that was a team of depth. Tampa Bay, depth.
It's I think they have better depth right now. Is it head and shoulders cream of the crop? No, but you got to go out there and play the games. And these guys that they brought in, if they can keep that third line healthy, the Roaring 20s line healthy, that's a great third line. If you're whatever you do on the fourth line, that might have a new look, new wrinkles here and there. If those guys work out, that's good. But those are ifs. You don't know that yet. When you bring in new guys, you don't know if it's going to work out. Just like you don't know if all these guys that the Panthers brought in are going to, or not the Panthers, the Predators brought in are going to work out. That's all. On paper it looks great, but got to play the games. He brings up the goalie thing and says, goaltending is an issue. Yeah, but why are we going down the road of it's going to be a failure?
No, it's not.
We don't know that yet. It could and it could not. And he's taking the question marks and making them kind of like law, and kind of making them like they're going to happen this way. And the goaltending issue is going to continue to be an issue. When it's like, okay, like, yeah, sure, you can go on his regular season Or are we forgetting about how he played in the postseason when we were giving up on him?
Yep.
We being you and I, and then turned it around. What if he carries that into the regular season? It's just, I know it's the offseason and I know content's got to be filled. We do the same thing. But to already throw in the towel on the Colorado Avalanche, just say like they are not a contender, I think is just, I kind of roll my eyes at it.
I don't know if I do that much. It's not saying they're going to be the worst team in the Central or in the West, but it's going to be a difficult task because, like,
Sure,
I know we talk about the Roaring 20s line, and it's easy to have all these lofty goals of predictions and projections of what these teams will be when their stats are all 0 on the depth chart, but they disappeared last year. And many times, and this was a point that was brought up in the article, secondary scoring, Dallas series, secondary scoring, where was any of that? Like, yes, it's one thing to have Nate and Mikko and Kale, but you've got to have somebody step up, and that hasn't been the case since the Avs won the cup.
I think for me is like and I'm not trying, like, I know some people are maybe thinking like I'm being a homer and like, no, it's not that. Like, I think I just have more optimism going into a season before it's even started. And then if it's not working out, got no problem saying it's not working out. Like, no problem saying that, like with Ryan Johansson and stuff, like, thought that was a good signing. And then, you know, as the season plays out, okay, now I'm turning my thoughts on that. And if I genuinely felt like the Avalanche just, no, they're just not a contender, to agree with him, I would say that. But I can't be there now before a second has been played and new guys haven't even stepped in or prospects haven't even stepped in to see what they can give you. Because maybe that's just the optimism side of it, of let's give them a chance. Let's give Georgiev a chance to carry over what he did in the postseason. And then if things are not going in the direction that I thought they could in the beginning of the season, then we talk about that and say like, okay, maybe changes need to be made. But to just do it now is just kind of why? I don't get it.
I'm not calling them basement dwellers, but it's usually contenders when they come into the season, they're talking about this is the best team. We addressed our needs. I'm excited to hit the ice. Everything you hear out of McFarland on down is we're doing all we can with the cap situation. Cap. We had to, and it's not so much we're building a winning recipe here. Wait till you see our dish. It's, hey, we're trying something new. We had to kind of get some store brand ingredients. We're putting it together. We'll see how it turns out. I don't know that it's not a confidence that you would expect from a contender going in. So I'm not saying they're not a contender. They're not saying they're a fake, they're a fraud, they're on the downturn, but maybe just a little bit of a step back, because honestly, financially, they can't be the typical Colorado Avalanche you expect year in, year out.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think there's different levels to what you want to consider a contender. Are they at that upper echelon, top of the line, like top two teams going in? No, I'm not going to put them there. But are they at that where they could push for it? Yeah, things got to go right, but things got to go right for all, like you said, 31 other teams as well. So, and go read the article. It's not behind a paywall or anything like that. You can go read it. I think with the secondary scoring that he brings up, talks about Jonathan Drouin, brings up, Nichushkin briefly. And like I said, it brings up the Landeskog stuff. And if he's not here, that hurts his team. Sure, it does. So that's where we're at. Let's get a quick break in here. When we come back, I'll quickly read a couple subtext comments on the article. And then we'll get into that Athletic article about the front offices and really contracts around the league and where the Avalanche stand on that. So we'll do that after this. All right, let's hear from Game Time. It's an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And prices on Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. They have killer last-minute deals, all in pricing, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. And Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. What do we love about the Game Time app experience? We mentioned the priority. They have last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off if you're buying last-minute tickets. If you're just like, hey, let's go to the game that's in a half hour, Check out Game Time. You get 60 minutes off for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Flash deals, zone deals, all-in pricing. You can put that feature on, and the price you see is the price that you pay. Seat views, that lowest price guarantee, or they'll give you 110% of the difference. It's the only place to go, really, if you're going to buy tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. So create the account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Want to get to, there's a couple of subtext comments on that article. This is from Eric. And he basically says kind of something that we were saying, like, it's not telling us anything that we don't already know. His opinion as far as non-contender, though, is ridiculous, especially before the trade deadline when cup concerns are addressed. Good point. As of right now, Avs are a top 5 in 90% of sports books, with Kale, Miko, and Mac to the rafters, and Hall of Fame is a no-brainer, barring career-ending injury. That was on a different article they were talking about Hall of Famers, but that still holds true for this discussion. They're probably Hall of Famers, all 3 of them, I would say.
Yeah.
We'll save that for next week. But he's right. Like, to say that they're not contenders when moves can still be made, maybe not before the season starts, but trade deadline and things like that, and who knows what's going on with Landeksog. He's got a point.
Yeah, it's just you don't have that same swagger. I'm just looking at last year. It's just you're nickel and diming this team together and hoping it works.
Joe says definitely some fair points in there, but he is only looking at the negatives. There are still 2 months, I think, to the start of the season. We added decent depth and still haven't a clue what Kovalenko and Annunen actually will look like. We are in the window still, and saying we can't contend right now is just silly. That's where I'm at, man. I agree.
Also, the Avs play better as the underdog. They like having that bulletin board material. So
that is another aspect of this for sure. Yep. And then Vargar asks, he goes, I don't think Georgiev can win a cup, and neither can Justus Annunen. I think they trade for a goalie and move out Nichushkin to clear cap. After that, they are the class of the NHL and the team to beat. So if they make those 2 moves, if they bring in an A1 goalie and clear cap, or to clear cap space, you get rid of Nichushkin, he thinks that they take that next step up. So
Vargar is my brother. We agree on a lot of takes when it comes to the goalie position. It's one of those that if it starts out in the first 10 games and both look really bad, it'll be a long season.
Well, let's get your take on Avalanche contracts, sir. The Athletic ranks, they do this every year, and they rank the overall contracts of each player on each team, and if they're good contracts, if they're bad contracts, basically looking at how front offices are spending and if they are spending wisely. We'll put this up if you're watching over on YouTube, which you should be. They give the Avalanche overall an A- from top to bottom. They rank them 3rd in the league. The only 2 teams above them, number 2 was Edmonton, I believe, and number 1 was Florida. And it's pretty amazing, Florida, what they're doing. It's and I know a lot of people are throwing out the no tax thing, but they're kind of set up for a good window. Florida is.
Oh yeah,
the Avalanche are as well. If you look at some of these, they grade them. They give them like a value, and I don't know if it's a little bit tough to see on that screen, depending on how big your screen is, but with Nathan McKinnon, so just to use him as an example, all the way over to the right, the value of what he's playing as is a player that could be making $16.5 million. So his contract's at 12.6, so that is a surplus of 3.9. So they're saving $3.9 million is technically what they're saying with Nathan McKinnon. And then over the course of his entire contract, that is $27 million that the Avalanche are saving. Now that can fluctuate year to year. But as of right now, over the course of what's remaining on Nathan McKinnon's contract, they could be paying him $27 million more. So that is an A+ contract. And they do that with everybody that you see listed here. They do not have Vanachuskin on here, and they do not have Gabe Landeskog on here for right now. So that is what it is. But your A+ contracts, Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar. And Cale Makar's surplus value is almost $5 million. So those are your best contracts, I think, by far. But what do you think looking at this right now?
I think, honestly, this puts a money value to all the discussions that have been going around. And to say, again, even Nathan MacKinnon being at one time the highest paid player in the league is still undervalued is an understatement.
Right.
It's crazy to think, but that's just where we are with this team. And to your point, Chris, in the first segment, it's why you can say this team is a contender when you could pay him more than anybody in the league, and it's still not enough. But it also points out a lot of discussions and something, again, to keep an eye on the moves to be that quote-unquote contender when you look at the worst two contracts on defense.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a second. But like you were saying, like the Nathan MacKinnon contract, they did a separate article of individual contracts, best value individually, and he was 7th. So we all sit, and I get it. The 12.6 takes up a good chunk of a team salary cap, but according to the Athletic and their model, he could be making more. That is still the 7th best contract value wise in the league. So take that for what it's worth. I know that doesn't help with with what's actually going on with the salary cap, but he's playing above that number, that 12.6 number right now. Yeah, I mean, and then you look at other guys here. Arturi Lekkonen's right behind Nathan MacKinnon with his contract's rated a B+. Mikko's at a B. Jonathan Drouin is at a B. Logan O'Connor's a B. Like, you see very little red in here. But where you do see the red is, like you said, on the defensive end. There's really 3 of them. Sam Girard is there. His is rated a C-. Josh Manson's is rated a C. And there is Devon Taves is technically in red, but it's the surplus is a negative 0.1. So it's basically even right now for Devon Taves. And there was, when I put this up, a lot of people were commenting on it. Like, why are they rating that Taves contract as a C+? Because he took less to stay in Colorado. And the only thing I can kind of guess as to why they don't really like that contract so much is what's left on it.
Yeah.
And, he's got 7 years on it, which, how old is he going to be at the end of that? What's his age? I mean, he's going to be, I know he's going to be like mid to late 30s when he's done with that, but he's 30 years old right now. So he's going to be 37 years old. So, maybe that's their angle as to why it's not higher than a C+, because it might not age well towards the end of the contract.
It just really pops off the page when Brandstrom is a B, and he just
B.
showed up.
Yeah, he's right behind Cale Makar. If you're ranking the defensive grades, Makar's at an A+, Brandstrom's at a solid B.
Brandstrom and DeHaan above Taser. Like it. I don't know how much that has to do with like when we did the season grades about his little bit of invisibility that he had and just kind of fumbling the puck at sometimes, but you expect that to be a little bit better, and then he'll be plus 0.1 million next year.
On the forward side, the 2 contracts that they don't like are Miles Wood. He's the worst graded contract on their team at a D+. Which is crazy because when you're paying a guy $2.5 million, you wouldn't think, it would be that bad, but they don't like it. And Ross Colton is right above him at a C. That's where I want to see next year. Like, both of those guys got a year in Colorado, had their moments. I thought Ross Colton had a very good season, and Miles Wood, we talked about him a lot, but it is what it is with him. But I like those 2 guys, brand new last year. I want to see this article next year when, this year 2, I always look at that. I always look at year 2 for guys in a new environment. And when they're settled, when they're just, there's a lot of craziness going on when you move cities and move teams, really for that whole first year. Yeah, you settle in nicely, but I think you can settle in even better in year 2. So I'm kind of interested to see where this goes with those two guys.
Especially if you said that Roaring 20s line at the beginning of last year, if you said that LOC would have the better looking contract out of Miles Wood, Ross Colton, and LOC.
Yeah.
And he's sitting up there with a B.
He is. Yep.
He played half the season.
I know. And then quickly, just the two goalies, they like those contracts. Annunen's at a B+. Annunen's B+, Georgiev's at a B. So I think value-wise, I think you're okay for goalies.
Oh, yeah.
But do they have goalie problems? Yeah.
And then the 7 that they signed in the offseason.
Exactly. So, overall, they seem to like where the Avalanche are spending their money and how they're spending their money. They don't really think any of these, are severe overpayments. So
checkbook contenders.
It's good. There you go. I like it. All right, let's get one more break in here, and then we come back. A fun little graphic that pits every team's best and worst records against each opponent. Not each opponent, who their best record is winning and who their worst record is against losing. Which teams are those? So we'll do that, and we'll wrap this thing up. We'll do that next. Let's hear from FanDuel. We love sports. Of course, we love them so much that we never want them to stop. But they did stop for hockey. They did stop for basketball. Those playoffs are all over with. And right now we have Major League Baseball and the Olympics starting today. If you're listening to this on the day it comes out today. I always forget that there's always a soccer match the day before. So the Olympics technically are already going on. So
that's right. 3-0 over it was the U.S. women's team.
Yeah, it was a women's team. Yeah. So we do have some sports, but it's fewer and fewer over the summer. And the sports, they just are not sportsing like they want to, like we want them to, Kyle. Are they? I don't think
they need more sports.
We need more sportsing. So FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. And all we have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that we are in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com, start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, it's the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, one more fun little thing we got going for you guys today. And again, if you are watching over on YouTube, we're going to throw this graphic up. And come on, go. There it is. So I know it's like very colorful and like there's probably a lot going on. This should have like one of those warnings like before a video game. It's the best and worst record versus an opponent since 2020. So you have every team in here and you have two columns, your record against whoever your best record against a team, and then your worst record against a particular team. For the Colorado Avalanche, I'll give, if you're not watching on YouTube and you're just listening in your car, at home, wherever, I'll give you a second to who do you think the Avalanche best record is against? And I'll give you a couple seconds, throw out a name. And if you said the San Jose Sharks, you would be right. They're 17-2, 17-2-0 against the San Jose Sharks since 2020. And I know that's beaten up on, a team that's in transition. But hey, like, I guess you're taking care of business, right?
Yeah. And I honestly did not realize the Avs played the Sharks that many times since 2020.
And the Sharks are on here a lot. They're on here like 5 times. The Ducks have their best record against the Sharks. The Predators have their best record against the Sharks. The Canucks, the Golden Knights. I think that's it. So
and the Predators.
I said the Predators. Yeah.
Oh.
So that's a lot of teams. A lot of teams are picking on the Sharks, and understandably so. The worst record the Avalanche have against a particular team. Take a second.
This one shocked me.
If you said the Winnipeg Jets You would be correct. They are 6-6-1 against the Winnipeg Jets. So I look at that and you're like, man, like you said, like I didn't know that the Avalanche played. How did they play San Jose so many times since 2020 and only played Winnipeg 13 times? I think that has a lot to do with the COVID season when they were playing. You played like 3 games in a row against one team, and there was that Canadian division where they didn't even play teams like the Jets. So I think that's where the discrepancy probably comes in. But yeah, I mean that was a surprise to you that they have not fared well against the Winnipeg Jets.
Like if you told me who do the Avs have the worst winning percentage against, I would have said Arizona. Rest in peace, Utah. But yeah. I would have said it's Arizona.
We always talk about that. Like they do struggle against Arizona. Did I think that was like the worst? I wouldn't think that would be their worst opponent or most difficult opponent. But I'm sure if you got like a top 5, maybe Arizona would be on there. If that's true. But the interesting thing is the Avalanche, like I said, 6-6-1. That's a 500 record. That's their worst record against the team. They're the only team on here that is not sub 500 against an opponent for their worst record. Everybody else is. That's not bad. When you're your worst opponent, you're still 500 against. You are on a pretty good roll. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, and looking at the entire table and everything that's on here, I saw one stat that I know made you extremely happy.
Oh, yes, sir. Why don't we get to that? Let's go around the league and see where the Avalanche are on other teams' charts here. So nobody has a best record against the Avs. So that's good. Worst record against the Avs, you got a few. The Minnesota Wild, their worst record is against the Colorado Avalanche, 8-13-2. This one surprised me. The Calgary Flames, their worst record, 3-9-0. And the one that just made me smile, Mr. Sullivan, the Vegas Golden Knights, their worst record is against the Colorado Avalanche, 8-11-0. Again, I didn't make this up. I didn't just conjure these stats up just to make it look all nice and pretty and throw the Avalanche in the Golden Knights section. But I loved that probably more than I loved the Avalanche having a ungodly record against the Sharks because you're supposed to there. Loved that part of it.
And see, I took that same gleam and glimmer in my eye looking at that Minnesota stat, a 391 win percentage versus the Avalanche. Take that back to 13, 14-year-old me and just give me just that picture and I'm going to have a happy life.
Crazy. I'm trying to see who's got like the best record against any one team here.
The Lightning against Montreal is a 900.
And that they're 13-1-1. That's the same exact one that the Bruins have against Montreal, 13-1-1. The Minnesota against their worst obviously is against us. Their best is against Chicago, 12-1-0. That's a 923. That might be the Stars are 10-1-0 against Minnesota, or not Minnesota, the Mighty Ducks. That's a 909. But I think it goes to Minnesota. Oh, no. Oh, there you go. The Predators over the Sharks, 11-0-1, a 958 win percentage. That's got to be the best one. Yeah.
Or San Jose.
I know. They beat something.
Hey, they could beat the Kings, though. They could beat the Kings.
Yeah. Is that their best one?
Yeah.
Wow. 12-8-2. All right. Not bad. So, yeah, kind of a fun little graphic there. And I do. I just love seeing the Avalanche in the column for the Golden Knights of worst record. Can't beat that. I'm happy.
There's your gift.
This is our Friday show, and I ended it on the most positive note you could possibly do.
Yeah.
If that doesn't put you in a good mood for the weekend, nothing will.
Yeah, the Avs are better than the Wild and the Golden Knights. Sleep at peace tonight.
All right, everyone. That's going to wrap it up for today and for this week. Next week starts technically our off season. So we go down from 5 shows a week down to 3. So we'll likely do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, space it out during the week. And we do that for the next month and a half or so, right before things start picking back up for the NHL. So that is going to wrap it up for today and for this week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and always making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. For Mr. Kyle Sullivan, Shaggy Von Doom, I am Chris Maselli, and this is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you guys on Monday.